Look, on Leadership Now, I promised never to do commercials, but here we are. Why? Well, I have a new book in the works. It's coming out spring 2026, and I wanted to give you an advance heads up about it. The title, The Future of Work is Gray, and it's kind of a big deal to me because the book dives into the age crisis that's reshaping work as we know it. It's something that I call age debt, but spoiler alert, it does turn into some solution. There's some hope, there's some positive, and that's called the experience dividend. So if your workplace still thinks that age is a liability, well, it's time to retire that mindset. In fact, we might want to retire the word retire. So yeah, I don't do ads. This is a special occasion, and for it, I am willing to go gray. And maybe Grey Goose will sponsor me, not sure. Anyway, spring 2026, the future of work is gray. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Leadership Now. Me, Dan Pontefract. Today in the house, what an interesting guy. Michael Clinton. Michael, a short bio, and then we're going to get right into the new longevity. Michael's the founder of Roar Forward. It's a business he started a few years ago that was really inspired by his best-selling book, and I've got a copy, if you don't, you should, called Roar into the second half of your life before it's too late. His work as an author, thought leader, keynote speaker centers on the evolving personal and the business effects of, quote, the new longevity. Michael's also a writer at large for Esquire and a regular contributor to Men's Health, the former president and publishing director of Hearst magazines. Michael's also a published photographer, traveler to 126 different countries, a marathoner, a pilot, CEO of a nonprofit organization and foundation, co-owner of a vineyard in Argentina, and the holder of multiple degrees. Michael, you've won lots of awards and you're getting huge support for this idea right now of the new longevity. And I wanted to start there first, Michael. So this conversation, the new longevity, what is it in your definition, and why should we be so concerned about it if we're thinking about it individually, but also, of course, if we're in organizations and thinking about the workforce?
Yeah, Dan, thank you. And thanks for that nice introduction and for having me on your show. Here's the headline. If you're 50 or 60 and healthy, you are more than likely going to live to be 90 or 100. The 100-year life is here, and it's manifesting itself in lots of ways, which we can get into. But, this phenomena that in the last 100 years, we've had more growth in life expectancy than in the entire history of the world prior to that. I mean, think about this. At the turn of the last century, the life expectancy was 62.
Mm-hmm.
In the US, Canada, Europe, it is 80 and above. In Asia, it's mid 80s and above. And so it's going to lead to a completely different kind of second half of life for us individually, but also businesses have to think about this from products and services and opportunities, their customers, their employees who will want to be working longer. So it has lots of ramifications. A lot of thought leaders say that AI and climate and the new longevity, the changing demographics are the major trends of our lives that we have to pay attention to.
So it sounds like, if I unpack this and begin with this next kind of line of thinking, it's good news, but also potentially bad news. And the good news, of course, is that as I've been 53 times around the sun, you're just telling me I get to live longer. So that's great news. And there's scads and scores and millions of others that are boomers and Gen X and even millennials that are going to live longer. Good news, Michael. But it sounds like there's a hint of pessimism, if not OMG moments that we haven't really thought about yet. What are some of those?
Yeah, no, so true. First of all, it's the individual's responsibility. And what we know now is genetics is only 25% of our own personal longevity. The rest of it is really lifestyle and how we choose to, all the things that we know we're supposed to do, like, eat well and sleep well and stress-free and, have community. And so those things are very important. But yes, as populations live longer, the cloud that is over the horizon is, how are we going to make sure that people have health span, that people have wealth span, that they can afford to live long lives, there's a very broad spectrum of people who have good fortune and that they have, they're inherently healthy and that they have good, financial foundation, but there are many who aren't. And
Mm.
so government policies, private public partnerships, businesses are all going to have to pitch in. I'm just back from Singapore, and the Singaporean government is very, very innovative and progressive on all of these fronts. I always say to people, look at Singapore for the future because they're focused on the democratization of the new longevity, giving support to people of all socioeconomic incomes, relearning, reskilling. Interestingly enough, people housing, you're 10 minutes from a park, so you're always with, being in the outdoors. So there's, they're a great example. There's no question, if you think about it, in 1935 in America, there were 7 million people 65 and over. Today, there are almost 60 million. And think about the impact that's having on Medicare and Social Security in our country. And those numbers are only going to get bigger and bigger. Every day, 10,000 people are turning 65 and they're living longer. So, there's personal opportunity, but there's, real pressures that are going to happen with regards to policy and business approaches. So, yeah, it's
Well,
here.
let's get into that because there's a number of things I'd love to talk with you about. One, of course, is you've got a great phraseology maybe, and that is kind of speaking about the concept of rewiring as opposed to retiring. And I like the rewiring concept, but I suppose it happens in two ways, right? We have to rewire how human beings are thinking, because to your point, when Social Security nests and nets were set up, it was sort of like, oh, you know what, you retired at 62, you'll probably be dead at 65. So there's only 3 years of you to tap into Social Security. Now you're telling me we're going to live sort of 30 years longer. And so there's going to be the need, perhaps, to tap in not just to Social Security, but to this other egg, which is like the nest egg. It's like I need to continue to rewire what I think about where individual working comes to play. So let's start with the individual, and then we'll get into what organizations may have to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was part of the book of Roar. The message is, if you're 60 and you're beginning to think about the traditional construct of retirement, and obviously some people will choose that, but if you're 60 and you're going to live another 30 years, what I like to joke about is you can't play golf for 30 years and hang out with the kids because they're not that interested. And also it's not sustainable, right? So
Yeah.
you have an opportunity to rewire in if you want to start a new career, if you want to launch a business, if you want to go back to school, if you want to train for your first marathon. And we, on our website, roarforward.com, we have collected stories of the people we call the reimagineers,
Mm.
who, I interviewed 40 of them for the book. And these are the people who are actually living within the context of this new social movement of new longevity. They're actually, as they say, walking the walk and walking the talk. And, they're designed to be an inspiration for so many of us, because I think the role models of the future, the science is today's 5-year-old has a 50% chance to live to be 100.
Amazing.
And yeah, I'm on the Stanford Center on Longevity board at Stanford University, and they do a lot of work on this space. So some of us may get to be 100, but 100 is going to be normalized in another couple generation or two. And some people even think that, the first person to live to be 150 is alive today. Who knows? The oldest person ever was 122. So
Mm.
this is being pushed out further and further. So for the individual, it means a complete rewiring and rethinking about how you approach the second half of your life and all the opportunities that are there for you if you choose to take them. That's on the individual level.
Yeah, and so on the organization side, my research suggests that well, we're ill prepared as organizations seem to be stuck in the moment of short-termism, show me now, show me the quarterly results. But if we put on a bigger, longer, panoptic kind of thinking hat on, it's pretty evident that the Western world and soon it seems on other parts of the world of our planet the birth rates are plummeting. So even though a generation is, roughly speaking, somewhere between 18 and 24 years, when I look at birth rates like North Korea or South Korea at 0.76 and Japan at 1 and my Canada at 1.26 and other parts of this world, which are certainly below the repopulation rate of 2.1, 2.2, I see a big problem for the workforce 20 years down the road, let alone the fact that we're aging in longer ways these days. So there's a double-edged sword that's happening. So tell me a bit
Yeah.
about your insights on this file.
Yeah, I wrote a piece for Esquire on this topic called "The Seismic Impact That's About to Hit the American Workplace." So, first of all, there's a huge talent drain of people who are moving out of the traditional workplace. I like to call it their first careers.
Yeah.
And there are not enough people in Gen X to fill a lot of senior leadership roles because they haven't gotten, the demand is going to be so much bigger than the supply for that next generation. But what is happening is that the phenomena is real. We haven't talked about the AI applications of what that's going to mean in terms of scrambling workplace and jobs. There's a great book called Nexus written by Yuval Harari. If you haven't read it, it's a
I
great
have.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's terrific. But I think where business is stuck is in an old construct. The way business is constructed is when people start approaching 60, you start thinking about how do you move them out of the system? How do you retire them? How do you build a pathway? And, I would argue that many people who are 60 want to continue to work for another 10 plus years. I mean, they see they're vibrant, they're engaged, they're curious, they want to learn. And so businesses are going to have to completely retrofit how they're going to keep their senior seasoned people engaged in
Mhm.
more meaningful ways. There's a big initiative in France called the Charter. 50 companies have signed it, from Air France to L'Oreal, which is a commitment to their 50 plus employee. How do you retrain them, reskill them? How do you promote them? In Singapore, if a company hires someone over 60, they get a wage supplement from the government.
There you go.
That's an incentive for
Yeah.
business, right?
Yeah.
But people are going to be working longer through this new longevity era as it builds. And as you point out, the negative birth rates or flat birth rates in a lot of developed countries, indicates that this is a long-term trend which is going to play out, over decades as human population on planet Earth live longer, want to work longer, be engaged more. So it's a complete rewiring of thinking of the traditional HR corporate construct.
So one of the potential blockers to this, of course, is sort of our tried, true, and tested ism called ageism. So what have you seen to combat ageism where, we've been used to the youngish looking workforce and then, you become a leader and you get some wrinkles and then you retire. But we're talking about significant aging and people staying in organizations, maybe not in senior roles, but at least in some sort of adjunct role, and they could be mentors, apprentices, etc. But tell me a bit about ageism
Yeah.
specifically and how you see us combating that ism.
Well, most people would say that it is the last bastion of discrimination that exists in cultures and society, mostly in the West.
Mm,
Um, I like to say that, ageism is going to impact everyone, regardless of their gender, their race, their religion. It is something that is going to affect all of us. But here's where I think is the glimmer of hope. The baby boomers who are the activists, generation. I mean, let's think about it. They marched against Vietnam, which was the first time ever, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, the sex revolution, Earth Day, women's rights, civil rights. The boomers were all at the front lines of that. And their current cause is ageism. And
mm,
their current cause is, if you think about the boomer who on the older end of 75, in that cohort, they're basically saying, wait a minute, I am a very different kind of human than what my parents and grandparents were. And I'm a generation that was focused on fitness and well-being and nutrition and not smoking and moderate drinking, collectively. And
Yeah.
so this generation is going to live longer and healthier, one would argue. But where we need to see it happen, and this is a big part of our business, is in representation of images, in advertising, in movie roles, and television roles. We're doing a half-day co-sponsored event with the Association of National Advertisers here in New York. And, all the marketers who come to that will see the opportunity of what 50 plus looks like. And how do you incorporate creative images that represent a contemporary individual? I kind of make the analogy of the women's movement. If you go back to the Mad Men era, stereotypical images of women in advertising, and men were making those decisions. It's the same analogy today. In a lot of advertising, you see people over 60 kind of moving slowly, walking into the sunset, holding hand, very like most groups would go crazy if they were represented that way. We need to see, more modern contemporary images. And we're starting to see it. The new Dove commercial,
Mm.
you may have seen with women over 60 is a great example of how that's happening. Estee Lauder did a big campaign in Europe called Because of My Age, which they're bringing to North America, celebrating that 50 plus. I mean, if you see images of, Oprah Winfrey 70, Jennifer Lopez is 55, Lenny Kravitz is 60, Martha Stewart's 82 on the cover of Sports Illustrated. It's beginning to break through, and having more of that kind of representation will help to, eradicate or dissolve the ageist thinking that's out there.
Another example that comes to mind for me is fellow British Columbian and Canadian Pamela Anderson, from
Yeah,
Baywatch Babe to proponent of showing your true self, ultimately in terms of image and identity.
yeah, great example.
Yeah.
Great example. Yeah.
Okay, you touched on it a couple minutes ago, actually, because I don't want to lose it, was sort of the impact that technology, digital tools, automation, AI is going to have on a workforce and individuals. So, in your work, where are you seeing the confluence, I suppose, of where aging workers and older workers in the workforce and technology, AI, et cetera, what's happening between those two tenets right now?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we've heard from researchers and people who have deeper knowledge on this is that the introduction of AI into our worlds, and of course, none of us really know anything yet in terms of how it's going to really play out. But the beautiful part of more seasoned managers and workers are, many people have been through lots of other kinds of business place revolutions, right? So in my personal business, as a publisher, it was all print centric, and we went through the digital revolution and had to figure out how we were going to manage that process. And more seasoned executives know how to manage change in a bigger way. And so there's a lot of thinking that actually for older workers, older management that have wisdom and knowledge and experience, they're going to be a great asset for companies in terms of how do we integrate AI into our everyday work. The other part of that is that I think the story is yet to be told as to what's going to be replaced by AI versus what opportunities are going to be created by AI. And the one thing that we do know is in today's iteration of AI, creativity and ideation is of new ideas is not integrated into ChatGPT because all
Mhm.
you have is what is out there and is in the quote unquote system. So a part of business is, and all organizations from business to academic to nonprofit is how do you create new thinking, new ideas, et cetera. And those will flourish. I mean, I believe that will flourish, in the AI era. And that also is a great asset that older workers and older managers bring to the party because they've been through, many, many iterations. I'll give you an example. I'm on a university board here in New York, and we were just presented with the new ad campaign. And I've probably been engaged in producing, a couple hundred ad campaigns in my career lifetime. So I was able to look at that with a completely different eye based on my experience. And the distribution of the campaign will have an AI element to it. But I think without having the seasoning and the experience, you can't necessarily have perspective.
Mhm.
So I think that, that brings a lot of new thinking into the discussion in business.
I've um I've interviewed some folks in Germany and in some of their manufacturing lines, like at Mercedes-Benz and BMW. They're actually using digital technological advances from an ergonomics perspective to ensure that older workers who may not be at the same level, quote, of fitness, let's just say, as folks that might be in their 20s, 30s, 40s, they're making accommodations so that that can allow for workers to work a little bit longer, into their 50s, 60s, even 70s. Do you see technological advances on the ergonomic side also helping the aging workforce?
Yeah, I think that that's a great example. Of course, the BMW has a big study on this where they
Mm.
also had the intergenerational workplace and the benefits to that, which is another topic. We're going to have 5 generations in the workplace at the same time, first time in history. And, we can all learn from each other, and intergenerational work projects always seem to have better results because of different perspectives. But I think that it's not only the ergonomics of the workers, it's also the insights on product development.
Mm.
So a good example of that is in the automotive space, to your point, there is a lot happening on the engineering side and the software side to accommodate. The argument would be for the older driver, but the automotive companies would say it's for everyone, which is fair. In the US, the average driver is 62 years old.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, exactly. And that comes from our Car and Driver magazine insight. But what happens is, to your point, in design, in automotive design, how do you rethink safety belts in terms of pulling them across your chest?
Mm.
There's a lot of software in cars now that measure your eyes. If you're falling asleep at the wheel, it will send you an alert. If you're holding the steering wheel, it's going to measure your blood pressure, your heart rate, and that might be sent to your doctor through a technology that's accumulating data about you. In Japan, they have Toyota's working on something called the exoskeleton, so that if you wear this waist down, you are able, if you have issues with mobility and flexibility, you're able to get in and out of cars more easily. Audi has a new lighting system that sort of bathes the ground as you're coming out of the car in light so that you're not stepping into a dark spot. Now, that helps, aging people, but that also helps younger people who may
Mhm.
have, eyesight issues or, any of that. So I think what happens is when you have internal focus groups of people who are over 50 who understand the needs that they have for product development, that's a win-win-win because it's going to have impact for everyone in a positive way.
Well, then we won't run into any of those terrible situations in which we've recommended a product for someone and they're like, you have no idea how I operate as a 75-year-old, and it's been invented by 29-year-olds.
Exactly.
I wanted to quote something from you from Roar, and it's sort of I'd like to spend the last amount of our time kind of in this bucket of thought, if you don't mind. So I quote from you. Make sure you roar loudly in the workforce, not taking any pushback from anyone who tries to put a label on you. It is your goal to stay in the work. Sorry, if it is your goal to stay in the workplace longer, look for people in your company, community, and neighborhood who are thriving at work in their 60s and 70s and learn from them. Become an activist in your company, industry, and community to dispel the archaic perceptions of older employees. Now, I call that out because A, I love it, but B, this speaks to me in terms of the concept of being the relationship connector builder, but pushing against the grain of why we've always done it this way. And so what I feel is that you're suggesting that individuals have to be both advocates, they have to be almost activists, and they have to be authentically themselves to push for what they want. So, can you help me a bit more on what you wrote there and sort of help people hear how they can be that type of individual in organizations that might be pushing back?
Yeah, no, thank you. Sure. I think one of the things that we learn when you look at business, you step back, younger professionals get a lot of support. They get a lot of benefits. They get a lot of training. They get professional development. It's all good and it's important. When you start getting into the mid-career person, it all goes away. The only thing you get is a retirement calculator. So we think that we've created actually a program which we have that we do with companies and through their HR departments, which is a whole program designed for the 45 to 65-year-old in terms of companies engaging them and learning from that, that they do want to work longer, that they do want to be reskilled, that they do want to have professional development, that they do want promotions or new kinds of assignments. So the way that individuals can enact that is to be very vocal about that with not just their manager and their management, but with their HR people, and really push back that, wait a minute, just because I'm 50 or 55 doesn't mean that I don't want to learn about AI, doesn't mean that I don't want to know about this new dimension. So, it is pushing the age ceiling, the glass ceiling, much the way, once again, that women had to do it in the workforce as they were, moving up into the ranks in terms of management. It's the same kind of thing. And so it's raising that awareness. There are some companies have ERG groups, employee resource groups for the 50 plus. Many don't. Many companies have, and there was a PwC study, only 9%, it is a few years old, so it may have changed, but only 9% of US companies include age in their DEI policy. Now think about that. And so finding out if your company includes age in their DEI policy is a really important step. And if they don't, question why not.
Mm-hmm.
And really be a leader in that space, and or starting an ERG group, and or saying, these are the kinds of things that mid-career professionals want from their companies. And I think that, more progressive companies, L'Oreal, I'll go back to L'Oreal, they have a program called L'Oreal for All Generations. And they're very, very focused and committed on this concept. So I think progressive, innovative companies are already getting on board on this front. A lot of it's happening in the EU. A lot of it's happening in England, in Asia. North America is way behind on this front because we tend to, leadership is not seeing it smack them in the face the way EU has done and the UK has done. And in certainly you referenced, Japan and Korea and China and Singapore. I mean, all, fast aging demographics. And so business is being reformatted as we speak. So we need to get on the bandwagon in North America, because if not, we're going to be left behind.
So the kind of last thread related, but slightly tangential, is that sort of notion that you speak of about being that lifelong continuous learner. So within the ecosystem of the organizational culture, what are organizations needing to do to materialize or manifest, I should say, that type of thinking from the newbie who's 18, 20, 21, right out of university, let's say, to the folks that are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s? How does that even happen?
Well, it's a lifelong learning is a concept that is so critical to our mental well-being, our neuroplasticity, our
Mhm.
growth. And, I was hearing some stats recently, when you graduate from college, about 3, 4 years out, your education is almost obsolescent. You have to constantly be learning and thinking. And I'll go back to my own experience of having to learn about the digital world and be a student in that space. And now AI, we all have to learn what that's going to mean. So you have to have a sensibility of lifelong learning and being a student at all times, just in order to, in many ways, just live. Think about I was using this example the other day at a speech I was given. Once upon a time, you used to get a paper ticket and you went to a travel agent to get that paper ticket for a flight. Today paper tickets don't exist, obviously. You book everything online. You do a whole digital transaction, and you download your boarding pass, and you have a QR code. And we were all forced to learn that because we had no choice. So when people say, well, I'm not interested in lifelong learning per se, I always say, but you've done it because you've been forced to do it through the digital revolution, being on your portal with your doctor, and getting all of your results. I mean, if you think about that, 10 years ago, it was something that none of us did. So lifelong learning is already integrated into our everyday lives. I always say, embrace it in a bigger way and think about what it is that you need to learn and want to learn in order to build on your career, your profession, your knowledge, your own life experience. It's a part of the action plan of ROAR, which is, acting on your goals, which is the action plan. And we have a lot, as we have a lot of practical tools and tips and ideas to do that. And lifelong learning is one of them.
Well, as the great Eddie Vedder said of Pearl Jam, it's evolution, baby. And certainly it is there, Michael. Okay, so last question about Roar Forward. You're working with like 50 different major companies. You've got things like your personal longevity journey. You've got the Roar Mastermind Group. You've got Roar Summit. Tell me a bit about Roar Forward and what you're getting into good trouble with these days.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a great question. And, we are a business intelligence platform, data insights content all around the new longevity. Our mission is to inform, educate, and inspire leadership, C-suite leadership in particular, as to how they build strategies and their tactics around this. So as you said, we work with over 50 companies. We have half a dozen great sponsorship companies who help us with our events and our big summit. We work with Voya Financial and Ralph Lauren and Unilever and Cornell Medicine and L'Oreal and Estee Lauder and many, many different categories of business. And we work with, we have a business intelligence newsletter report that companies subscribe to. We do workshops, we do C-suite presentations, we do different kinds of programs for their employees. We license our content, we produce content around the topic. So yeah, we're all in. We're all in. Thank you.
Well, you are roaring, Michael, roaring, I must say. Where can we find out more about you or Roar Forward or Roar the book?
Well, thanks. RoarForward.com is our site. I'm on LinkedIn, as is Roar Forward. We put a lot of content on our LinkedIn platform as well. But those are the best places to see what we're up to. And, we have a steady flow of, if you spend some time on the site, you'll see lots of great content. So thank you for that.
Well, it's been an amazing. I hope I call you a new dear friend because sinking my teeth into this particular issue, I thought, OMG, thank the Lord that someone like Michael Clinton is out there doing this already and helping organizations and leaders see that their head really has to get out of the sand. Being gray and aging is not a detriment. It's actually the manifestation of crystallized intelligence, isn't it, Michael? Yes.
There you go. We call it the new growth market. Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's been a pleasure, folks. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode. Michael Clinton, founder of Roar Forward, author of Roar into the Second Half of Your Life Before It's Too Late. Please check out roarforward.com for more information. Thanks again, Michael.
Dan, thank you so much. Great to be with you.